Well, it's not quite noon, so I guess it's good morning. Welcome, thank you. I'm Rich Fleming. I'm the president of the St. Mary's County Chamber. I want to thank all of you for coming today. This is always a really great event for us. It gives a chance for all of us to find out what wonderful things are happening in the school district and to have a wonderful meal, which today is being catered by the culinary students here at the Academy. And I think you'll find out if you were here last year, it's fabulous. So if you could, please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I say, we thank you all for coming, for supporting the school system and for supporting the Chamber of Commerce through this event. The reason why I started coming here last year is because, you know, over the years in community colleges, I find out I'd go to a community and he'd say, "So do you know about your career academy?" The what? And it's just amazing how many people do not know about the gym that we have here. And so last year we wanted to showcase it. And that's why we came back again this year, because again the students do a wonderful job and it gives them experience. Anyway, the program started back in 2009, so this is the 10th year, and it's a way for our chamber members to have an opportunity to come in to interact with the school leadership, to understand what's going on, what's happening, the challenges that we face, and we know that there are a lot of challenges that are coming up ahead of us. After the superintendent finishes his formal presentation, he has a panel coming up here. They will be doing that. We'll also be doing questions, so if questions come to you, there's some yellow sheets on the table. If you have a question, fill it out and just kind of wave it, and Donna or Lynn or I will be coming around and we'll pick it up and we'll give them to the superintendent. I do want to thank all of our sponsors today, the College of Southern Maryland, Educational Systems Federal Credit Union, Sabre Systems, and Williams, McLernan, and Stack, LLC. So please give them a round of applause. I'd like to introduce some of our VIPs here with us. We're lucky to have our commissioners and our county administrator. First, let me introduce President Randy Guy, Commissioner Eric Colvin, Commissioner Mike Hewitt, and Commissioner Todd Morgan, and of course our County Administrator, Dr. Rebecca Bridget. Also, the public schools have the Board of Education members, Karen Bailey, who is the chair, Kathy Allen, vice chair, Jim Davis, Mary Washington, and Rita Weaver. We also have some other individuals with us. We have Bonnie Green, Executive Director of the PAX Partnership. And representing Senator Chris Van Hollen's office, we have Scott Travers with us. We also have some of our board members here, Chad Day from ServPro, Ray Dodson from O-Line, George Erickson from the St. Mary's County Metropolitan Commission, and Marsha Williams from Williams, McLernan, and Stack. But I do want to say one word, too. I do want to extend my appreciations to the staff here at the Tech Center, particularly the principal, Mike Egan, and also Bonnie Kelly, who worked with me on setting everything up. So it's always great to work with them, and I appreciate all the work that they do for us. So with that being said, it's now my pleasure to introduce our superintendent, J. Scott Smith.
Thank you very much. All right. How's everybody doing today? We're doing well. School teacher's shirt on. Mr. Rogers, Mr. It's a day of kindness. It's a day to remember Mr. Rogers and all of the wonderful impact he had on the world. And it also brings me back to my first years in St. Mary's County back in the 90s when we all wore cardigans. Now, they weren't as dark as this, but they were kind of flashy. It was kind of fun. It was back in the 80s. Welcome. Thank you very much to Mr. Fleming and to the board for the opportunity, for the opportunity to come together and talk to you a little bit about how our school system is doing and give you a state of the schools address. We've been doing this for a decade. A couple years we took off, but we've been pretty much at least every other year, we've been getting together and talking about how things are going in your public school system. And way back about a decade ago, we also adopted our mission statement, 22 very important words. They're words that we live by. They're words that we start our year, every single year with our new teachers, and we kind of unpack and talk about them. The biggest that we've been this year, the board is currently working on an equity policy. We have an equity committee that is convening. That work is now out it'll be bringing back to the board in the next couple of weeks. And it really goes to the bottom of our mission statement, accept no excuses, educating all with rigor, relevance, respect, and positive relationships. And so it's amazing that a mission statement written a decade ago can have so much relevance to work 10 years later. I ask all of you to please pay attention to that work. I know it's being covered in the local media. All of the filming of it is being done at the board meeting, so if you're not able to attend a board meeting, you can certainly see what's going on. And talking about filming, today we have the incredible video production crew from St. Mary's, from this school, from the Forest Center. They will be videotaping everything and your questions that you'll be asking later on, and so once we're done, we'll be posting it to YouTube, and you can go back and watch your favorite clips. So, as you ask questions later, and I need you to ask questions later, we can actually zoom right on in on you. We'll have you stand up, and we'll have a great opportunity for you to learn all the things that are going on in your school system. Last year, we focused on being accountable and transparent. It seemed quite appropriate to be talking about that as the Kerwin Commission was getting underway, and we were talking about money, and we were talking about how we were doing. Please know that that is still true today. We are accountable and transparent. And if you want to know what's going on, we have some great documents on our webpage that really kind of guide and govern our work. Bridge to Excellence Master Plan, if you go there today, it will be last year's Bridge to Excellence. If you go there next week, it will be this year's Bridge to Excellence Master Plan. We write the plan over the summer. We have input from all of the stakeholders across the system. It then gets presented to the state for clarifying questions. They come back, and then we ultimately present a finalized master plan, and that'll be happening within the next 2 weeks. Our Educational Facilities Master Plan is up there, as well as our Capital Improvement Plan, and we've engaged in several discussions publicly about, and we'll finish today with a little discussion about what that really means. Also, when we talk about being accountable, we have on that same page our audited financials. Not only can you watch presentations for the budget as it's being built and take a look at the budget process and the budget document, but you can take a look at our audited financials from this year all the way back at least a decade plus on the website. If you tune into our board meetings, every month we have an overview of where we stand with our expenses and our revenues and any movement of funds within categories. I was told that this is the very best that you can possibly get. Our final audit was an unmodified opinion. There were no instances of fraud. There was no material weakness on internal controls and no single audit findings. So those are the 4 things that you want, and it's like a 4-star. So to Tammy McCourt, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, and all of her attendant and supporting staff, that's a really wonderful, wonderful thing. I want to talk a little bit today about return on investment. What you put in and what you get out. Because we're going to talk about a little bit about how much education costs. And there's been an incredible active discussion about how much education costs and ultimately who carries the burden for paying for it. So we need to talk a little bit about what's the return? What do you get for what you put in? I'm going to frame it in the way this is framed. We're talking about children. We're talking about the whole child. One of the challenges that we see with Kerwin funding is we're breaking apart this little strand here and this little strand here and this little strand here and this little strand here. And in education, it doesn't work like that. All of these things have to come together to have children be really successful in an educational setting, to have the scaffolded support that they need to maximize their achievement. It is about the whole child. So we have invested in safety across the system, and we've obviously escalated our investment in safety in the last several years due to the tragic things that have happened within our school system, within our state, and within our nation. We have hardened the building and infrastructures. We've done access control. We've done security cameras. We have over 750 security cameras now on a system that can be accessed remotely. We have additional safety and security personnel that we have added to all of our buildings. We have, thanks to a great partnership with the Sheriff's Department and support from the county commissioners, we now have school resource officers in all of our secondary schools. That is really something that isn't found in other counties across the state. Moreover, we have an incredible relationship with our school resource officers, so they really are a great resource, not only to the administrators and the staff within the building, but the students themselves. That relationship that they build and the comfort level that they feel with having safety and security people within their building, that's exceptionally important. And then we also have an elementary school Overwatch program for all of our elementary schools where an officer identifies a school that he or she personally wants to interact with, and they kind of adopt that school. And through allocation of resources, of overtime funding, through grants, we're able to compensate officers to go and do perimeter checks and interact with students at the school in their off hours. And then last, we've done behavioral supports. We recognize that safety doesn't come from just investing in a building. Safety comes from people, and you have to invest in your people. So we've done crisis prevention training from the Crisis Prevention Institute. We call it CPI training for more and more staff every single year. And we've really spent a great deal of time looking at our threat assessment protocols and our threat assessment teams at each one of our schools. So when we do identify something that gives us pause, or something comes forward to us from a community member or a student or a parent or a staff member, we have a protocol in place to go through and take a look at just how much of a threat it really is and what's the appropriate level of response. And that, again, is a great partnering between ourselves and the Sheriff's Office and wraparound systems within the community. We've invested in engagement. How we get kids and how we get parents and how we get staff members all really locked into what's going on within the schools. And so the very first that I've personally been involved in is the student voice in the superintendent's student leadership council. And we have with us Ms. Nagina Ori, who is our student member of the board. Terrible, known as a SMOB, but that's, if you hear somebody goes, oh my gosh, she's the SMOB, that's a really great thing. She's the student member of the board, and she is also the chairperson for the SLAC, helping us really take a look at what we're doing this year when we're talking about the voice of students. We really have highly trained staff. We spend a great deal of time taking a look at what they do and how we can help them take a look at all the challenges that they have. And it's really important. You can't have a highly trained staff without a highly dedicated staff, a highly motivated staff, a staff that believes in the mission that they have every single day. So that's an incredible partnership. And just an example of that, taking a look at some of the work that we've done with restorative practices and restorative justices that was specifically championed and brought to the county from ESMIC. And so we were also joined by our ESMIC president, Ms. Jill Morris. Jill, if you could please stand. And our UNISERV director, Ms. Liz Leskinen. So please, welcome, welcome, welcome. We also, if you've heard, universal design for learning, that means it's multimodal. That means you can't teach like I'm trying to do right now, where you stand behind a podium and I read off scripts and we go through a PowerPoint. That's not the way learning takes place in our schools. We have interactive, hands-on, thoughtfully creative, engaging opportunities for kids to learn. And today you're going to hear from our Washington Post Teacher of the Year and our St. Mary's County Teacher of the Year, and they're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. Specialized pathways, you're sitting in one of the great resident places for specialized pathways, 24 different ways in which you can earn your CTE designation and pathway right here at the Forest Center. And then the last is we recognize that all kids don't learn the same, all kids don't learn at the same path, so we have to have structured academic interventions to help kids when they need our help. We invest in support. That goes really to the last bullet when we talk about structured academic interventions. That means you have to invest in that support. You have to recognize that you need a multi-tiered system of intervention and supports. That you're going to have a big triangle where 75% of your kids really do pretty much get it most of the time. They don't need a great deal of redirection. They don't need a great deal of scaffolded support. They don't need extra time. They don't need it. But there are things that universally you need to do for that larger group. Then on top of that, a smaller 10 to 15% are going to need some very specific targeted interventions. And then at the very top, there are going to be some kids that need incredible wraparound services and support that extend beyond the classroom and go into the larger community and extend throughout the year. And that really is something that we've invested in as a school system. Response to intervention, that RTI, that's incredibly important. That means that when you do something, you keep track of what you're doing. You gather data on it. If you're going to use a research-based intervention, you better have behind it the data that says, is this being successful or is it not being successful? And if it's not being successful, having the expertise to be able to go on to something that perhaps might better suit the needs of the child. And then social emotional learning. Whole child. We're totally invested. And we recognize that our kids are coming to us with even greater needs than they've ever had before. And so that's why you see with the Kerwin Commission this emphasis on very early childhood education, universal pre-K, full-day pre-K. That's great. We're already doing that for almost 75% of all of our students who want pre-K are able to access their parents. I don't know if the children want pre-K. Some of them do on certain days, and then sometimes they don't. There's an opportunity for all of them. And it starts with Frog Street, where they really model how to interact with others, how to interact with one another, how to have the social responsibility within a classroom. Things that perhaps for the older members of the audience you were taught explicitly and sometimes with a switch at home, perhaps. These are things that we constructively build into our classrooms, and we start with our littlest learners. That goes up to conscious discipline. Conscious discipline is a different way of taking a look at discipline within the classroom, how you respond to behavior. It's predicated on something happens in front of you. It's not happening to you. You're able to manage the situation. We have done conscious discipline training for almost every single teacher in elementary, kindergarten, first and second grade. We have heavily invested in training for that. And then going out and actually then working with our parents and our community partners to give them training as well so they understand we have a common language when we're talking about student behavior in classroom. Responsive classroom, morning meetings, how we socially interact with one another, that takes us all the way up through elementary school. Restorative justice, again, middle school and into high school. Positive behavior interventions and supports. We're closing in on 20 years of doing that as a school system. And then most recently, capturing kids' hearts, how we really make sure that we are emotionally connecting to our kids in a secondary classroom. Investments in challenge. We're all about challenge. We're all about performance. We're all about dual enrollment. We're all about earning college credit well in high school. We're all about recognizing that AP courses are a fantastic, rigorous way for people also to earn an opportunity to get a credit in college. We have all of the academy programs, each one of our high schools, one middle school, one elementary school, and then we're here at the Forest Center with CTE Pathways. And once again, last year you heard from all of our kids in the CTE programs. There's internships and apprenticeships associated with them. There are industry certification and credentials. Technical skills attainment is a component piece of all the program advisories that work through each one of the systems. And there's incredible opportunity and articulation with colleges and trade schools. Over 1,000 students are here enrolled. We mirror the demographics of our city, of our county in this building. We have 24 programs and 25 courses have complete articulated college credit, which means you take the course here, you get credit here, and you also get credit at the college level. And then the last, we're going to start with the end and then go back to the beginning. Wellness. You got to be well. You got to be healthy. You got to feel good every single day. And unfortunately, these used to be things that perhaps you'd learn in the community and with your parents and with your grandparents. And with, we find that we have to really spend a lot of time talking with our kids about healthy choices. Healthy choices certainly about nutrition, our farm to school initiatives, and the over 1 million meals that we serve our kids every single year. We talk about our facilities, making sure that we have up-to-date athletic facilities, making sure that our playgrounds are renovated and engaging and fun. And then the last goes back to the beginning, mental health support. We recognize that we keep kids the most safe when we take care of the whole child and we provide those kind of services. And one of the things that we're really excited about is we have finally hired out all of our social workers. We received a grant working with the Department of Mental Health and hygiene, just fantastic. So 8 social workers at all of our schools, secondary schools. So each one of our high schools and each one of our middle schools now has a social worker, as well as school psychologists. We've added to their ranks. We still recognize that there's so much need. Round out with counselors and pupil personnel workers, and we have a support network for our kids in our schools. And there's always room for more. One of the things that we hear in the Kerwin Commission is this emphasis that needs to be placed on social emotional well-being and mental health support services, and we're already there. We're already doing a great many things. Before they had the mental health coordinator and they built it into Kerwin, we had identified that person, we had hired them, and they were working for our kids. So I did mention our master plan. The new master plan, they tell you to focus on 3 things as opposed to focusing on everything, because you can't really improve everything, but you can improve 1 or 2 or 3 things. This is then mirrored at each one of our schools' improvement plans. We're focusing on early literacy, of course. We're focusing on transition, 5th to 6th, 8th to 9th, 12th to the future, and really focusing on the fact that we need to get kids in 9th grade. If they are at all behind, we got to catch them up in 9th grade, because there's no room for failure in high school. We need to make sure that they're on track and they graduate on time in 4 years with their cohort. So all of this takes money, and I figured at this point I have been talking for, oh dear God, a very long time. How about a really great video with some incredible talented students talking a little bit about, so we have an incredible video production crew here, and we have students that are in their year 3 and they're looking for independent projects and they're looking for a fantastic way to get messages out to people. We have Joshua Wright right over there, camera number 1 next to Mimi, there he is. Joshua, Gianna Tillery, and Sophie Williams have been doing these videos since the beginning of the year, Be Your Best You, where they go through a whole host of topics about what it's like to be in school, what it's like to be your first day, what it's like to do a FAFSA, what it's like to do the SAT. And so we went to them and said, hey, let's talk a little bit about budget and money and understanding what that kind of looks like. Could you put together a video all about budget and what would it look like? So they did exactly that. So I'm going to show you that incredible video.
Hey.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
I'm good. How are you? Just headed
Good.
from lunch.
Cool. It's a lot of homework.
I know, we have a big history project due tomorrow and I have to use my textbooks for it.
I wonder how the school system pays for textbooks and lunch and other stuff in the school.
They have to budget everything.
How do they do that?
Good question, but let's go somewhere I can put my books down, please. The school receives funding from multiple sources. The state, county, and federal government and grants all contribute to give money to the operation of our schools.
So that's what pays for things like textbooks, paperwork, printers, and bus transportation?
Yes. Imagine if your parents gave you an allowance, let's say $30 a week. You can't just spend all of that money. You have responsibilities and things you need to pay for. You can't just spend it on shoes and games. If you drive, you got to spend it on gas. If you travel, you have to spend that money on food. In order to do those things, you have to set a budget. and set priorities on how much money you need to spend in each activity. The school system does the same thing. They receive all of those funds from multiple sources, and they have a budget based off of the school system's needs.
I would just ask my parents for an allowance so I could afford anything I want.
That's not how it works. Funding is based on the number of students in the entire system. If there are 18,000 students in the school system would receive a certain amount of money per student. There's a policy in place called maintenance of effort, which is when the funding has to be at the same level per student as last year. This is in place so educational programs can continue to operate at the same level. The challenge is when the needs change or different requirements are added and you try to make do with the same amount. Let's use Josh's backpack as an example. What do you have in there?
Let's see. Okay, so I have my folders, I have my textbooks, another textbook, and then I have my pens and pencils.
So imagine the textbooks are the funding sources of the school system. The folders can be the individual budgets from each department, and the pencils and pens are the things you need to make the school work, like electricity, transportation, etc. All of it has to go into your backpack, but it all has to fit. The budget works the same way. All of these parts need to work together. Think about your backpack in kindergarten, besides the cool Transformer one you had. It's probably smaller, it couldn't hold much, so each year your textbooks got bigger and bigger, and you needed more supplies like calculators and rulers. Your backpack needs to get bigger, just like the budget.
How do they settle on a budget? I mean, if we're still using the backpack analogy, how do they decide whether they want to use the same textbooks or the same folders, or if they want to buy new ones?
So the superintendent gets the recommended budget from all the departments in September. These budgets are compared to last year's to see what the needs of the system are for the next year. For example, every school year you go out to your open house, you meet your teachers, and usually they tell you what you'll need for their classes. Just like the superintendent gets a supply list from the different departments. Let's say the school system spent some money on technology, things like smart boards, computers, and so on for the schools in 2018. The superintendent can look back and determine what they will need to spend for 2019. In 2019, the big need may not be technology, just like you may not need a new composition book for every class. Let's say there are more students in 2019 school year. There may be more of a need for textbooks and bus transportation than for technology. It all varies on the needs of the school system.
After he has all the department's budgets, he puts it together and compares the budgets to what money he will get from the state, county, and federal funds.
So if my mom gives me $30 for school supplies for my backpack, and I need 5 composition books, 5 folders, and 5 pencils, I would have to compare how much I need versus how much my mom gave. But why start so early if we're not going to be using the money until next year?
The superintendent uses the next 6 months to adjust the board's budget to get within the numbers he thinks the system will receive. Once that is all worked out, he will present it to the Board of Education.
The majority of our budget cost is personnel, supporting the 2,300 employees who work on behalf of our kids every day.
The board's budget is very complex. The Board of Education has to consider the class sizes so that they're good to learn in, gas prices going up for bus transportation, heating prices increasing, raises for employees, textbooks, all the things we need every day in order to have an effective system. Just like you need to make sure your backpack has enough space for your folders and books and homework. Some of these choices are hard. There are a lot of known factors and a lot of unknown factors that determine where most of the budget's attention goes to.
The superintendent has to present the budget plan to the Board of Education. They work with the superintendent and listen to the concerns of the parents and staff to determine the priorities of the school system. They might have to cut or add depending on what they feel is needed. After they get to a good balance, they approve it. Once the budget is approved by the Board of Education, it goes to the county government and the county commissioners for the final approval.
How do we see the budget?
There will be a meeting where the public can voice their concerns. The county commissioners also have a public meeting where you can go and express your concerns or show your support.
Wow, this budget sounds like hard work. How do we know what's happening next week or next year in terms of budgeting and money?
All we know is that the SMCPS has 20,000 students and staff members we need to teach and keep safe every day. That is our #1 priority.
So every day when you walk down the halls, when you're reading your textbooks, when you're on the bus, or even eating your lunch, all these things are built into the budget for the school system. But remember, things are fluid.
And we all work together to make the budget a workable solution for everyone.
How did you learn all of this, Sophia?
You can watch board meetings or learn about the school system at the St. Mary's County Public Schools website, www.smcps.org.
Wow, I never knew my backpack could be so informative. Let's head out, guys.
That was fun. No, we don't want that. Stop. Okay, there we go. There's a lot of information about the budget in the annual report that you see. The biggest thing is to recognize that our budget is based on federal funds, very small, state funds, about half, and county funds, about half. So all these things have to go together in concert. The operating budget, the unrestricted operating budget of $222 million, the majority of that budget is driven by salaries, fixed charges, and contracted services. So over 90% of the budget ultimately goes to people. It goes to people. It goes to people. It goes to people. It goes to taking care of people. Salary 60, fixed charges 23, and contracted services, which includes and starts with, and the majority of the driver behind that is bus drivers, is transportation. The rest of it is what we kind of work out from year to year to year. We also have capital projects. So there are state capital improvement projects. That means that the state carries 58% of the cost and the county picks up 42% of the cost for eligible projects, and that's that's almost $10 million in this year's money. We also have local CIP. Those are jobs, those are things that are not eligible for state funding, and they're completely carried by your county government through the CIP. So not only is there $222 million worth of operating budget, of which the county commissioners are responsible for about 50%, there is also another $13 million worth of capital improvement projects, of which the county commissioners are carrying more than half of that cost. I did try to express all of this last night to Dr. Kerwin and with the Kerwin Commission to talk about the fact that when we talk about educational funding, it is all about the relationship that the counties have with one another, all the elected officials, the Board of Education, the county commissioners, taking a look at state funding, federal funding, and then taking a look at what needs to be done. So the big question is our money, I mean, we're talking about $250 million every single year. So in 4 years, we'll spend $1 billion in education in St. Mary's County. Is it paying off? Well, we have MCAP data, the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program. That is what replaced PARC, which did replace high school assessment, Maryland assessment. I don't know, either way. We're better than the state at every single grade level and every single test. For advanced placement, we increase the enrollment every single year in our AP courses, and we outpace not only the state, but the world. We outpace the global percentage of students scoring 3 or better. Our graduation rate, we're really proud of our graduation rate. 94.5% of our kids graduate on time in 4 years with their peers. More importantly, we've also closed gaps between our economically disadvantaged students, a challenging population to move significantly. We now have them up in the high 80s. Our goal is to have them over 90%. And for our African American students, we're only about a 2% gap. That's impressive work. I'll pause for applause here. That's impressive work, okay? And why it's impressive work is because we got over $33 million worth of scholarships offered to our kids last year. 45% say they're going to go to a 4-year, 35% say they're going to go to a 2-year, 10% say they're going to go into an industry-related certification and program. 6% say that they're going to attend a technical school, 10% say they're going to go right into the world of work. And why does that matter? Well, that matters because lifetime earnings matter. If you don't have a high school diploma, according to 2018 data, you're going to make about $1 million. Ooh, $1 million, that's a lot. Consider you're going to work until you're 65. Divided over that time, it's not quite as much as you might think. If you get a high school diploma, and keep in mind 94.5% of our kids, you instantly increase your earning by about $400,000. If you do some post-secondary, keep in mind that's 4 to 10% of our graduates, you now go up to $1.6 million. For all of those who are going to go to the College of Southern Maryland or other two-year institutions, get an associate degree, that's 35% of all of our graduates now, you're at $1.8 million. If you go to a four-year institution such as St. Mary's College or something related to the Maryland, University of Maryland System, Southern Maryland, UMSS, whatever. That's $2.4 million. If you further it, it could be up to $3 million. Why does this all matter? It matters because of taxes. It matters because this is the money that fuels the economy that comes back into the system. The strength of your school system is the strength of your county, is the strength of your community. So, hey, that's worth a clapping point too. And I'm about ready to step away, and because Kerwin, somebody's probably going to ask a question about Kerwin. Everybody wants to talk about Kerwin. This is a per pupil allocation for all the LEAs across the state. From Harford County, which is the lowest per pupil, all the way up to Worcester, which is the highest per pupil. And there is great disparity across the state for how much money is provided to educate children. And to just give you an example of the difference from where we are, and we were 24 out of 24, and we were 24 out of 24 bumping right along for quite a while. We are not 24 out of 24. We are not last in the state. We have moved up 7 spaces, and we've moved up 7 spaces because of the fact that these county commissioners have funded the school system above maintenance of effort. We have engaged in a conversation back and forth. We have gotten to the point where we have been able to receive the funds to work creatively together to make sure that we honored a negotiated 4-year agreement, the first time that that's happened in I don't know how long, but recognize that if we were funded at the state level, the difference is about $1,500 per kid. We have over 17,000 kids. That's over $24 million worth of money coming to our kids and through our system. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's coming from local coffers. That means that perhaps the state needs to step up and provide the appropriate level of state funding coming back. The Kerwin Commission has laid out, and they have I think there are about 6 counties that they said they're doing the right thing, they're on track, this isn't going to be a demonstrable impact on a local. The state has to pick up their part, and that's where we are. The state's going to need to pick up its part of funding, and we're looking to the tune of 5 to 8% over the next several years. If Kerwin was to be funded, would be an increase for our state level of funding. At this point, I'm done talking. I did think that last year you had a great opportunity. You interacted with some of our kids. You got to sit at our table. They had displays. You walked around. You talked to them. I think that this year it's really important that you hear from the people who get to work with our kids every single day. And 3 of the most exceptional people have been so generous with their time as to come and join us. So if we could please have our wonderful Miss Jennifer Cord, who is our St. Mary's County Teacher of the Year, come up and join us. Miss Tracy Harding, who is our Washington Post Teacher of the Year, Agnes Meyer. Yay. And Principal Mike Egan, who is our Principal of the Year, our Leader of the Year, Washington Post. Please have a seat. And so, to make them feel comfortable, we gave them the questions ahead of time. But as far as their responses, I want you to hear from the people who are really doing the work every single day with our kids. And hear from them about what makes their work challenging and rewarding and incredibly important. So I'm going to start with Ms. Jennifer Cord on the end. And so your question that you were provided ahead of time was, how do you connect with kids? How do you build relationships with students? And can you talk about what that looks like? How does that look in your classroom?
Well, I'm a 5th grade teacher. I teach in a very small school in St. Mary's County, one of the smallest. And we have about 270-ish students, give or take, every day. Yeah. So we have 2 of everything. It's almost like it reminds me of a small private school, but it's free, It's a great place to be. I've been there for 23 years. I have no intention of leaving because it is so amazing. Because I've taught there for 23 years, I've developed relationships not only with my students, but with the families that I work with. I have children who are 30-ish. My oldest class is like 32 now. They have children, they come see me. So I've developed these like family relationships over many years. So it's something that like I pride myself on. I feel like I'm a super part of our community. To me, relationships are first and the content comes second. If I don't build relationships with the kids I teach every day, then nothing that I say or nothing that I teach them will matter. Nothing that comes out of my mouth about decimals or history or anything else, if they don't care about what I'm saying to them or they don't care that I care about them, then it's gonna connect a little, but it's not gonna be passionate and they're not gonna remember. And they're not gonna remember the things I did with them. They're not gonna remember that I thought they were important and that I cared about them or that, I went to one of their games or I received a text of a turkey somebody shot over the weekend. I get those things. But I have something to talk about the next morning and they know that I care. Like, oh, you got a turkey. I learned a lot about turkeys one year from a child. Not my thing, but I learned, and he knew that I cared about him, and we made a connection. So those kind of things make for better content, and when I do stand up and talk about decimals, and I stand up and talk about multiplication, they are more bought into what I have to say, and they know I care. And their parents know I care, and they know that I'll do anything for them. So
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Very nice. Thank you, Ms. Cord. Ms. Harding, you are involved with the Global International Studies Academy at the Leonardtown High School right across the parking lot. Talk to me a little bit about the impact of rigorous instruction on your kids and what it means to be an AP level.
First of all, I want to talk about kind of what rigor looks like in an AP classroom, also with dual enrollment classes. One of the biggest things I feel like is that the level of content and skill that kids have to do in an AP class is much higher. By definition, it is a college level course being administered within a high school classroom. So it has to meet that standards, those standards. Students have to have different types of skills, like time management, for example. In your academic level classes, often you get an assignment one night, you have to turn it in the next day. Normally in an AP class, you're given an assignment, and that assignment is due in a week, or it's due in a week and a half. And students have to learn, how do I manage that? They also, and probably one of the biggest things when you look at skill-based learning that they have to do, and that's in every AP class, whether you're talking about foreign languages or social studies, math, those different types of things, they have to learn to read different texts. And we're doing this with all kids. Academic level classes are rigorous. They are the appropriate rigor for the students that are in them. But when you put a kid in an AP level class, they need a higher level rigor. So the types of texts that they're looking at, or sources in general, whether it's a political cartoon or some quantitative bit of information in a graph, they have to be able to look at higher levels of sources, more sources, and be able to synthesize those, analyze them, and then spit that information back out, whether it's in a verbal communication type of a presentation or higher level writing skills. With that, the positive impact that it has on our kids, I'm actually gonna start with the fact that it's stressful for them. I'm not gonna lie, AP classes are a struggle, but I feel like the biggest benefit to that struggle or that rigor is that it is a productive struggle, and it's in an environment in our school system where it is safe. In our high schools, we have teachers that are constantly saying, we care about you, we wanna help you. We instituted the 1 hour lunch program, which is phenomenal for those kids, but they're in a location where they can struggle with time management and they can struggle with the difficulty and depth of content and the difficulty of skill, but it's a safe environment where they have somebody that's constantly saying, are you okay? Let me help you, this is how I can help you, and this is a skill. And when kids go to the workforce after graduation or they go to college, that's a skill that they're gonna need. They need to have struggled, they needed to have been successful and grown in a safe high school environment so that when they face that struggle in the real world outside of school, they're able to apply those skills in their real, actual everyday life.
That's awesome. Very nice. Thank you very much. That persistence. And then last, Mr. Egan, Principal Egan here at the Forrest Center. Talk to me a little bit about the opportunities that are available to our kids and how kids access the Forrest Center programming.
First of all, we at the Forest Center share the same mission statement as the school system. One of the things we differ in a little bit is that our vision statement is to offer value-added education. And what that means is, number one, students need to walk across the stage. Many of our students need to complete their Forest Center program to meet their graduation requirements. So we're very proud, over about the past 6 years, we have over a 99% completion rate here at the Forest Center. So when students come here, they get through. Research shows that students who take CTE courses graduate at a higher rate. So that's number one. Number two, we have something to offer every type of student. So if a student wants to go on to college, pretty much every one of our programs offers either articulated or transcripted college credits, which means they're earning college credit while they sit in their seat at the Forest Center. And many of you know who have children who have attended college, as I have a senior in college right now, it's not cheap. So every penny you can save while you're here at the Forest Center, that's something we want to direct students to. Also, one of the things we encourage students, if you want to go right to work, we're going to offer the real industry certifications here at the Forest Center that make those students more marketable. And each year we're expanding on those levels of certifications. And when I say real industry certifications, I mean real industry certifications that equate to employment opportunities when students leave the Forest Center. And one of the things we're transitioning to now is, to add to that value-added piece, is to explore apprenticeship opportunities for our students so that they can actually go to work and earn while they learn. And we're very fortunate to have a great partnership with the Patuxent Partnership, who are doing a lot of work to help provide those opportunities. So I encourage all of you, if you have questions about that, to seek those folks out, because it's been a great partnership. To access the Forest Center, it's pretty simple. Students at the end of their 9th grade year get online. We have an online application. They apply to our programs, and we take a look at things like academic performance, attendance, discipline. Each student receives a score, and we take the students with the highest score, and they get the choice and choose, and we kind of filter into each of our 23 completer pathways in that fashion. So, we're very blessed to have a superintendent and a Board of Education who are very supportive of our programs. And I can definitely say that the Forest Center is definitely an investment into the future of this community.
Well, thank you very much, Principal Egan. Okay. So in the past, when we've done this, there have been some questions, there have been a few questions, that we've run out of questions. So I have other questions that I could ask them, but instead I'd love to turn to the questions that perhaps... Okay. Okay. Why is, and I'm gonna defer.
Oh, gosh.
Why is cursive not taught?
Oh, goodness. Well, I will say that I can't say I require, but I have suggested to all my students that they actually sign their name at the top of every paper this year, so that they at least know how to sign their name. So when they go to the bank and they go to sign papers, they can actually sign a signature. But it is taught in our school. I think it's a school-to-school thing. I mean, it is in the content standards that they should be able to complete I'm quoting this off the top of my head, but I know that there's a standard that talks about them in elementary school having to complete a final product in some form of handwriting,
Right.
which could be interpreted as cursive. But a lot of it now is technology, and sadly, in a good way, some ways, but sometimes that's a lost art. It'll probably be secret code for a lot of us one day.
Yeah. But if you do go and visit a classroom, you're going to see the letters posted all about the room, and they are printed and in cursive. So although cursive is not taught as in like,
Not like
slap
we
your
do.
knuckles with a ruler, you didn't do your S correctly, and S, the capital S, that was always just.
It's changed,
It is
too.
just pure torture.
It's not the same.
So we expose them to it, but keep in mind, we're trying to,
There's a lot to
politely,
fit in.
it's the 21st century. We're trying to make them multimodal learners on, platform agnostic learning devices so that they can code for the cyber attacks that, with Cursive is a wonderful thing. And,
I do write in cursive on the board. I mean, I feel like they need to be able to read it. We
Yes.
do, and there are a lot of kids that choose to write it. They've learned it in second grade. Our second grade teachers still teach it at White Marsh.
White Marsh, very good. Okay. You did a great job. Did she do a great job? That is, she did a great job. All right.
I know. It's
All right. I'm going to go back to the library system. Okay, great. And for the record, many of you could use some cursive. Just saying, man. Maybe we do need to go
They
back.
need to come back for a lesson.
At least printing, right?
Penmanship B.
How can we help support extracurricular activities like mock trial?
Excellent question.
Is that a good question? Is that
I love the question.
okay? Great. I'll hand it to you. How could? Yeah.
Do you want me to be honest? We just spent we watched this wonderful 6.5-minute video on budgeting and funding. And I will say that my extracurricular activity that is my passion is mock trial. I coach mock trial at Leonardtown. We also have a mock trial team at Great Mills. And every year it is a struggle to figure out how I'm gonna fund my transportation or my buses. Because when you only have a team that can have 14 people, says the state organization, you cannot divide competition buses between 14 students every single time, because that's an issue. Other than funding, which would be lovely if anybody wants to help fund the Leonardtown High School mock trial team, we're doing good. We have a great attorney coach. We have great students. The other faculty at the school support the program, but really it's difficult sometimes with funding when you have a group that's really small. But mock trial teaches phenomenal skills to students, thinking on your feet, prior planning, working collaboratively. It's an excellent, like, real life skill club program.
That is again, what a fantastic response. Let's see. How do you balance the need to have SROs in the schools without criminalizing student behaviors that wouldn't normally be referred to the juvenile justice system? Although I don't have an SRO here, and I don't have Mr. Wyant here, I can tell you that you can't be arrested for something that's not a criminal act. You can't be arrested for something that's not a criminal act in a church or in a mall or in a park or in a school. So if you are arrested and charged with an offense, it was indeed a criminal offense. I can tell you that we have spent a great deal of time working with our SROs and our sheriffs to talk about behavior within school, to understand the way in which we interact with our students, to talk about the fact that suspension doesn't modify behavior, to really recognize the restorative practices approach. We have spent a lot of time looking at what happens to a child after they are issued a citation for perhaps marijuana, or, well, they can't be issued a citation anymore for tobacco or vaping because it's no longer against the law for a student to own it. There's a great conversation to be had there. Our emphasis in the school system is how you make restitution, how you restore the relationship that you had with your colleagues and with this building and with your friends, how you recover from mistakes. And Jen, that's one of the things that you said kind of briefly, was like, we're all about making mistakes, and how do you recover from them? Something happened, how do you then move through it, and perhaps the attendant consequence for it, move through it, and then become reintegrated back into and supported for and successful in school. Students are not expelled. Students cannot be suspended for more than 10 days without an extended suspension conference where we talk at all of that. Any decision that we make that impacts a child's learning is done with a whole team addressing what's going on in that student's life. We can probably have a much larger conversation about this, and I imagine that when we get into the regulations relative to the equity policy, I think we're going to have a very engaging conversation in all of that. So thank you. With such growth occurring within the county, how will the school system manage the population growth in terms of zoning? What is the process to change zoning? I'm just going to put this aside because that has nothing to do with the school system. Correct? Correct. So, but I will tell you that, so the student population growth within the county has been flat. It declined one year. I think we're up this year. We've got about 17 to 18,000 students. We might see 100 kids in or out from year to year. The challenge that we have is that right now there are many other options to public school. We have over 1,000 students who are not in public school. They are in some kind of home instruction setting, some kind of supervised, perhaps online. And while that works right now, perhaps because the parents believe that's the best environment for their child, when and if they do decide that they want to fold back into the schools, that's a lot of kids. So we do plan for, we project, we talk about, we go through. We'll be talking a great deal about what our enrollment is, what our actual enrollment is, why it takes so long to actually count the kids in school throughout the month of November and into December. And for zoning, we remain a faithful partner to the county commissioners and the land use growth management team. And any way that we can be of help, we will certainly be of help.
That's what I think.
Redistricting? Nobody signed it. Okay, so yeah, well, zoning is with land use growth. I thought that might be a reference to something that's happening down the street a bit. If we're talking about redistricting and what school your child attends is based on where your home is located, I will tell you that if we get to the point where we need to redistrict and rezone the school system, we do have budgeted next, Dr. Walker, correct, next year? We're taking a look at a comprehensive plan. We're going to bring in specialists to talk about what our capacity is as a school system and what are some options for moving kids about. We'd engaged in a very long conversation. There'd be so many opportunities for input. We haven't rezoned since we opened the last elementary school, and that's usually what necessitates a discussion of rezoning. So I don't see that in the near future. We are going to engage in a conversation to talk about what it looks like.
I think it's been in the news lately. Real estate.
And it certainly has been in the news, right? So if I,
Not no longer tell people that this is your school district.
right. Is that here? Is that in St. Mary's?
No, it's in Virginia right now, but it's heading this way.
There was a large article today in the New York Times about what's going on in Howard County with the massive redistricting that they have proposed to undertake.
Yeah.
Which is a very difficult discussion to have.
Well, either way, I know that in St. Mary's County, that is something that we have to engage in as a collaborative conversation amongst the community. We would all have an opportunity to discuss what we're going to do, why we're going to do it, how we're going to do it, and when we're going to do it. Okay, so great. When will the high school program push for artificial turf fields for their athletic program? All right, great, good. Well, first of all, I encourage all of you to recognize that we have spent a great deal of time and money and effort for our fields at each one of the schools, and they're natural turf fields. They're pretty impressive. This is not the field that it was, so if you go to Leonardtown, a field that is used excessively, that's not the field that it was 7 years ago. We have invested a great deal of time and energy in Bermuda grass, and the administrative team at each one of the schools and the athletic director, they spend a lot of time grooming that playing surface. That being said, it's a little over $1 million our last survey to do each one of the schools. You can't do one school without doing all. We'll talk about the equity policy on all of that, and it'd be a $3 million expense. That's something that we can actively discuss in each budget. I know that there's always people that come out that want to have a conversation. I know that the county is investing in that type of field for recreational areas, and we'll see how those go. We'll see what that looks like and how they go. And most importantly, whatever we decide to do, we do together and we partner and we talk about it as we go. Is that it? Are those all? I have a question about the library system. At least 8 Maryland school systems have worked with their county libraries to get fine-free library cards for all students. Parents may opt out. There is no cost to parents or the school, and students have access to the library online resources. May we work with you on that. And I want, who wrote that?
Can I
Who wrote that?
have a response?
Dr. Blackwell, in the audience. Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Yes. Yes. Yes, we can.
And I would like to personally thank you all for helping us. I'm going to throw out a quick advertisement. We're still looking for a CAD teacher. So anybody knows a CAD teacher wants to teach. But the library really helped us out because they came in, got our kids the free library cards. So our students were able to, it was lynda.com, I can't remember what it is now, that's a huge database of tutorials for CAD, and our students were able to access that, and it really saved us here at the Forest Center because we have a great sub in there, but they're not a CAD person. So we've been very lucky to have that partnership, and we're very thankful. So,
Well, that's a good response, right? Okay. Thank you very much. And we're going to, Dr. Blackwell, yes, that's an active conversation. We need to have that conversation. All right. Well, so at that point, that's all. So you don't have any other questions about your school system. That is fantastic. That is great news. I take silence as a tacit approval. So, you know, whenever everybody's, okay, we're all good. It's 1:30. So how close is that to hitting the measured mark? And at this point, I'd just like to thank everybody for attending. I'd certainly like to thank our incredible panelists. Can we give them another round of applause for these subject matter and incredible experts? At this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Rich. Thank you, sir.
I want to take this opportunity to thank Superintendent Smith, all of the staff who are here today, the school board, the commissioners, and everything they do. And again, one last time for our sponsors, College of Southern Maryland, Educational Systems Federal Credit Union, Sabre Systems, and Williams, McLaren, and Stack. And of course, we've already thanked the culinary students. Part of the thing I think you've seen, though it's not been gone into detail, is we all hear all the time we can't get enough technical workers to come to St. Mary's. Well, I hope you've learned partially from this that this center is training the skills and providing the skills that we keep often asking for. It's just we need to expand ourselves sometime and look to where they are. They are always looking for internships. They're starting apprentice programs, which is going to be wonderful. So it's a great opportunity for you to support this system, to help those of you who are in contracting for Pax River to find the people that you need and bring them in, and many of them are going to want to keep going to school. So it's a great opportunity. So again, like I say, this is a perfect jewel, and I appreciate everybody providing this facility.